Stanislav, you're ruffling papers.
Yeah, I have some paperwork here. Can you hear me? I feel like I need to read this out loud to our audience and my co-hosts.
It depends on if it's another cease and desist directed at me, because if it is, I'm not interested this week.
Is my microphone on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's picking it up.
Am I coming through okay? You can hear me all right?
Come
Yeah,
through,
you're
Stan.
good.
All right, let me... Hold on, I need my reading glasses 1 second.
They're made out of paper.
All right. This says, congratulations. You just qualified for the Magic the Gathering United States Regional Championship at either SCG-Con Portland or Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Did you got my facts then?
I got your facts, baby. The dive down is going to Portland.
Wow.
Sweet. You're just breaking it now. This is the cold open and the episode content.
It's also going to be the title.
The dive down's going to Portland?
Or Stan finally won an RCQ.
Seems good
Yeah.
for clicks.
Yeah. Get that engagement, baby. So good work, Stan.
But Stan, seriously, you can mail that back to me now.
Hello and welcome to episode 299 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps.
Stanislav,
Hey, Shane.
do you have like an official title now, like future RC attendee Stanislav Golovchuk?
They
Like,
give
is that
you
like
business cards when you win.
Yeah, you get. They have a QR code on the back that's just, I'm a spike now.
It's a QR code that's really good at getting your card picked out of the bowl at Chipotle.
One side is a full art Supreme Verdict featuring the Destroy All Monsters poster with Ikoria creatures. The other side is your name embossed in a font called Cillian Rail.
Okay, Cillian Rail. I'm not familiar with this typeface. This is... Oh, I see it. Cillian Rail, web, font, and desktop.
Stan, they do give you one of these, so you will get one of these with your name on it right there.
When do I get that?
They send it to you, or they give it to you at like when you go to the RC. It's just sitting there on the table for you.
Whoa, I can't wait.
Is the Cillian Rail thing an American Psycho reference?
Yes, David.
Is that what that movie was called?
It is called American Psycho.
I'm looking at Cillian Rail right now. You know what I have to say about Cillian Rail? Does not live up to the hype.
Okay.
It's 90s.
Well, our constant font critic, Dave Harbarger, is here yet again.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to tell me next? You don't like the color bone?
I mean, I prefer colors other than bone. Like ultra, I like a nice clean ultra white mohawk, super fine, 100-pound cover. That's why I like my cards.
What does that mean, Dave? Is that like that each page weighs 100 pounds?
They each weigh 100 pounds.
That seems unwieldy.
Yeah, I actually don't know what that metric means for sure. It just means it's pretty heavy. It's
One
a heavy
ream
piece of paper.
is 100 pounds.
Not one ream, because that would be that's definitely. I've held a ream of 100-pound. It's not 100 pounds.
It's probably how much it costs when you buy it in A4 in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I don't think that's true either. Anyway.
Also with us, it's the spikiest Magic Online streamer in all of Massachusetts, Devin O'Donnell, aka Doomwake.
I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily call myself that. That is a title that you've bestowed upon me, but we'll have to check the tape on that one. You did mention it is episode 299. Now, that means that next week, if my math is correct, I believe next week might be episode 300. Is that correct?
Ooh, don't remind me that we need to figure out what to do for episode 300.
If only if only we did not already figure out what we maybe could have potentially possibly done.
No, you were on fake episode 300, Devin.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay,
That was just a diversion. The real one is ultra top secret.
Oh,
Okay.
no. And
Well, in
I
that
haven't
case-
gotten either of these memos.
I'm doing it solo. That's what makes it really secret.
It's just Shane and I reminiscing about elementary school.
Dave, I always loved Mad Minutes.
Sure, Mad Minutes. I was talking to my kid. You know what they do now? My kid has the same thing. They call it rocket math, and I have to do it with him in the morning.
Well, what do you time him?
Yeah, I have to time him every morning, and then he goes and does them at school. Rocket math.
Where's the glory of being the first one to go like slap your paper on your teacher's desk, or like drop your pencil and be like, you guys just got owned?
Oh, I just do the practice rounds with him.
Oh, okay. Practice. Talk about practice?
Talking about practice.
We're out here recording a podcast and you're talking about practice?
He ain't happy about it.
Practice? Not a game.
Rocket math?
Rocket math.
Is that like Rocket League?
No.
That's like Rocket Money.
Similar.
Speaking of our new sponsor, Rocket Money. That'd be fun.
One of us is an executive at Rocket secretly. Have you seen that ad on Survivor?
No,
it's all over Survivor. My kids constantly are like, why is someone crying at the end of that ad where the guy says he's an executive at Rocket Mortgage? I was like, I don't know, man. But
that's how happy this person is to give you mortgages.
Brand penetration going on.
Speaking of brand penetration, there's one brand I would like to penetrate your pocketbook.
Wow. Can we air this?
I insist that Shane continue this
metaphor.
This strained metaphor. It's a family-friendly podcast. Heavy Play. I'm sure they're loving this ad read. Card gaming accessories brand that will improve your gameplay and your game day. The way they do this is by creating objects that you want to purchase and use in your gaming. They have playmats, they have deck boxes, they have dice boxes, they have card sleeves, little deck insert things that let you track your sideboard, your life pad, things like that. And what's good about all of these things, enhanced ergonomics, enhanced mobility, enhanced protection. As you may have heard, Equip Mag system. You magnetically attach all of your stuff together. Not the paper, though. Although, Randy, I'll give you that idea for free. Make the paper magnetic. You attach all of your stuff together. Your deck boxes, dice boxes, make little bundles, attach it to your playmat, carry it all around. I even like it when I'm not carrying it because you can snap your dice box to like one little corner of your playmat and keep it there. You do the little pop out, the dice pop out. I love that part. You can get this stuff maybe at your LGS if you're a fortunate person, or you can always shop at heavyplay.com. You can use our code, TheDiveDown2024. That's 2024, the year that we are living in, 10% off of your first order. They are also, of course, at basically every in-paper tournament style thing. Go to the booth, tell them the Dive Down sent you, and check out all the stuff in real life. Stanislav.
Shane.
We have a show this week.
We do. We put another one together.
$2.99, baby.
Yes, on this week's show, we are going to talk about the single most important Magic the Gathering tournament that took place in the world last week, followed by a recap and breakdown of the Magic World Championship in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Mm-hmm. I see what you did there.
Shane's also going to tell us a little bit about what it's like playing Magic Arena on a new gadget, in a new segment that I'd like to call Shane's Gabbin' Gadgets.
This is definitely going to be a very repeated, not one time wind down.
And we expect a new segment every week, Shane.
Okay, something about gadgets every week. I'm sure this is perfect for our listeners.
I'm sure it'll be easy for you, buddy.
Yeah, easy for him, hard for our listeners.
That's the problem. It's too easy for me. I would agree.
We're just going to take a hard turn into Gizmodo here at episode 299. Perfect.
I did just load up my handheld emulator device with Neo Geo Pocket Color ROMs. And, of course, an overlay to make it look like the Neo Geo Pocket Color when I'm actually playing it, because you gotta. If you know what I'm saying.
Other working titles for this segment were Shane's Gizmo Garage, as well as Shane's delightfully over-engineered exploration of gadgets you didn't know you needed.
Those are both good. I like all of those.
But, then I decided to drop the make it cleaner.
Yeah.
How about Shane's Venmo requests?
Shane's, I'm going to make all my Venmo transactions public, and then we can just read them on the podcast.
Yeah, just in time for spooky season. I've seen those Venmo transactions, and they are scary.
Okay, housekeeping, Stanislav. We have no new patrons, no increased tiers that I'm aware of. We do, however, have a new review from Soups2323. I'm also a LeBron James fan. Best MTG podcast yet. I appreciate this. I've only listened for 4 weeks, and the podcast got me right back into competitive Magic. I don't know who you're listening to. Y'all got me back to spending my whole paycheck to try to be competitive.
No.
Didn't tell you to do that, my friend. I hope you're happy. I am. Because I sure am, says Soups. Soups, thank you for listening. Thank you for this nice review. Weird was only 2 stars, though.
You know, Soups, I want to make sure that you're not overspending. The cost of living is high in the world. I don't know if you pay rent. I don't know if you buy groceries, but look after yourself too. Magic will always be there.
Have you guys seen that YouTube Shorts person that does the like financial audits of people and he just yells at them?
Yeah.
Are you all getting served that content? What's his name? Caleb Hammer or something like that?
Yep, it is.
I don't know. Like I watch him a little bit, but then I'm like, I don't know if I like that I get served these. What do you guys think? Is it good that I get served these or no? Devin's
For
like
a
your
specific
sus.
audience. We're a specific audience.
Dave, you know how I know you're a boomer? Because you watch YouTube Shorts instead of TikTok.
Yeah, I don't want to go on TikTok. It's true.
Same.
I just don't want to install that app. It scares me. And not because of like, Chinese data security stuff or fears like that. I don't want exposure to the world of TikTok. I don't know if it would make me happier or angrier.
It's going to suck you in.
I don't need the second.
Oh,
Yeah.
When I'm on TikTok, I feel nothing. It's just like a zombie-eyed glare.
I think you feel inspired though to make such banger videos as Bloody Marys or just drinking ketchup.
That's
and
true.
some other things like that have really gone viral for you lately. So here's the thing. I read a stat the other day that 7% of Americans are apparently influencers now. And so Stan, look for Stan on TikTok. 7% apparently.
7.
It's a pretty high number.
It's a
Craig
way
posted
higher
that in
number
the
than I
Discord
thought.
today.
How many people are doing it gratis, I wonder?
I don't know.
Okay, but if you want to join our Patreon, if you want to help keep us going a little bit, you can go to patreon.com/thedivedown. You can get immediate access to our Discord, get some other swag like stickers and tokens and pins, signed Dive Down card sent your way. We appreciate all you Patreons out there and hopefully upcoming ones. You can go to our store, thedivedown.com/store. You can use Mana Traders to rent Magic Online cards. You can use our code THEDIVEDOWN10. Questionably, the word 10 is written out. So the Dive Down TEN. And our buddies at Nerd Rage Gaming give our listeners 8% off their order with the code DIVE8. Thank you, Nerd Rage. Stan, I'm gonna steal your thunder. So in the hot news we didn't talk about last week because we had other things to talk about edition, the Pioneer Masters release date on Arena was officially confirmed. It is happening on December 10th. 2024. Explorer will then be retired and Pioneer, at least in some sense, will finally take its place on Magic Arena. This is designed as a draftable set with 394 cards.
Big
so
one.
I think you better be drafting this one. It's probably better than opening packs, is my guess. Maybe. I do have 5 draft coins sitting around, I think, that I haven't used in years, so Let's. I'm gonna definitely bust those out during Pioneer Masters. So this is good. Like whether or not you want to fully call it Pioneer because it doesn't have literally every card in the format. Like I'm gonna trust that they probably boiled the ocean of options pretty well in putting this set together, along with cons coming out a bit ago, and more on Arena later. But I think it's probably a place I might want to dip my toe back into again for some digital play. I don't know how are you all feeling about finally having 394 more cards for Pioneer? Actually, I don't know if they're all new. Like maybe I'm guessing there's some duplicates there, but I don't actually know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think they've officially released the whole card file yet. I would be a little bit more excited to play Pioneer and Arena if we had some paper tournaments to prepare for, but unfortunately that is not the case. But I mean, it is Pioneer is a great format right now, and if that is what gets more eyes on it, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, it'll just be nice to be able to play the decks of Pioneer that interest you. We'll talk about Standard when we talk about the Worlds breakdown, and I'm Standard's looking pretty sick in terms of options of decks. Pioneer, of course, has slightly different ones, but I think it's just good to have another way to fritter away some time on the computer. Lord knows I need that. Stan, Dave, you ready? You amped?
I am pretty interested in it, although with all the talk about Standard lately, I've been kind of like, should I just be playing Standard on Arena or just drafting more often than I am right now? I see Devin kind of nodding in the corner over here, so I don't know.
Have your room?
I've been yeah, we're in the same room. I've been generally a little more interested in Arena lately, so maybe this helps. I did always say if Pioneer came to Arena that I would go back, so maybe I'm beholden to that past promise.
I find that Arena is nice in like little fits and bursts. Like I'll
get your 4 wins a day for your quests.
Well, it's more like I will get into Arena for like a week or two, where it just becomes my primary way of playing Magic, because I get tired of Magic Online, or I care about a format that is served to me via Arena, and then that peters out, or I go back into Modern, and then like Arena goes by the wayside again for an extended period of time.
Yeah. I guess I'm just kind of really glad that we could sort of be out of like the uncanny valley of Explorer being like a pseudo format.
Hopefully. I wonder what bangers they're going to leave on the side of the road in this 394 card set.
Yeah, it would be pretty funny if there's just like this random one card and somebody just like wins the next Pioneer Spotlight Series with it, and it's like, oh hey, by the way, this card actually is not on Arena, so
good luck.
Yeah, or if it's just like Treasure Cruise, they're like,
that one's already there.
Oh, is it already there?
Yeah,
I thought it
cards.
wasn't for some reason. Okay.
Yeah, it got cast against me today when I was playing Arena, and I was like, oh yeah, this card's broken. Even on Arena, who knew?
It's amazing. Best card ever.
We assume there's zero likelihood that they use Pioneer Masters on Arena to introduce cards into the format that weren't actually printed in a standard set.
Yeah, no way. This
no
is
shot.
Not
they're
like
staying,
they're not going to throw in like some random Snapcaster Mage or Electrolyze or whatever, right?
No,
I think they mentioned that it was all reprints or cards that were already legal in Pioneer that are not on the client.
Okay, good.
Fingers crossed. We also did apparently will the SpongeBob SquarePants Secret Lair into existence. Comes out in 2025. So you know what to buy us for a holiday of some kind.
Hold on. Did I show you guys this tweet? I'm going to link you this real quick in the document. You got to check this out. So
I saw it on Twitter.
Is this yours?
The other day,
is this your prediction?
Go check
for
this
like
tweet
2023 or something?
Yeah, check the date on it.
Yeah. That's good.
Apparently it's all my fault.
Yeah. It's not, I'm mad at you, but I still like you.
I like the person who replied with the Javier Bardem Dune gif of Lisan Al Gaib.
Yes. A lot of people replied the Lisan Al Gaib, which is pretty good.
I mean, fortunately, SpongeBob does not appear. It's a secret lair, so it's not going to be a standard funneled Universes Beyond, unless, of course, they put standard cards with SpongeBob treatments, in which case, you bet your little butts we have
bet
to
your
do
bikini
that.
bottom dollar.
Nailed it. Listen, I don't know if this is the place to talk about some of this kind of stuff, but I did want to ask.
Uh-oh.
Since we're in this room of talking about the furor over the last week, do we have any parting thoughts about this that we feel like are additive to what we talked about last week? Or should we just get on to like other more timely things? Because the discussion is ongoing, obviously. The only thing that I am still confused about that I would love for your guys' impression on is Mark Rosewater, and I'm looking for the actual Blogatog post, basically saying, once again, making it sound like they're not going to do Modern Horizons sets anymore.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that was one of the developments, I think, since we recorded.
Yeah, so we thought it was that way.
Yeah, right. But they like really formally admitted that like part of the, I don't know if they would call it a problem, but like among the conditions that led us to this point was this ongoing challenge of designing straight to modern sets. that led to format churn, which I think many of us have been very vocal we don't like in Modern. The churn of Modern Horizons and Lord of the Rings leading to the format rather than it being like the original standard funnel.
Yeah. It's definitely a love-hate thing for me for what it's worth. But either way, I was fascinated to see that particular note where he said, I'm paraphrasing because I can't find the post, but he's saying, we've proven that we're kind of not good at balancing cards that are going directly into these eternal formats like Modern. So
doesn't matter. They sell them.
But he's basically saying they're not going to do it anymore. And I was just curious if you guys felt like, if you had seen this post, Stan, it sounds like you had, like, it sounds like they're not going to do it anymore.
So I don't think it was necessarily him like saying that they're going to remove Horizons. I think it was the UB product specifically, because I remember in a different article that I read, I think it might have been Forsyth, the day that they posted the announcement, they were like, yeah, they didn't make any definitive answer, but they said, we're probably not going to stop doing the MH sets every, 2 or 3 years or whatever. But I think they're okay with that every couple of years, that one big metagame shift.
Yeah, what I can imagine is just that they're not going to do... UB going straight into standard means that there's no like balancing for Lord of the Rings or Assassin's Creed that like for some reason gets selected to go into Modern, but some other one might not. So like if you're designing around a set concept of what a particular UB set would go into, always standard, then you're not going to have to sort of worry about that. I just feel like the cost, like the profit margin on the Modern Horizon set has to be so immense. Just in terms of like, you can do this every couple of years, you get some play testers in the room, you design it, do some hot reprints, do some hot new prints, make some money. Easy breezy.
I mean, that makes the most sense to me. Shane, it's just the ongoing stuff. Stan?
Well, I wonder if like the subtext of this is that we'll see more frequent high-powered standard sets.
It's possible.
That's the worry, I think, right?
Yeah, how do they work with that then, though? It's because it's like, the standard's 3 years now. Like, what makes you think they do more high-powered standard? Like, if they don't do any more Modern Horizon stuff?
Well, I think he's saying that because of the UB, right? That he I think the theory is that if you want the UB stuff to sell well, you got to put high-powered cards in it. But then if you're putting the high-powered cards in the UB, you're introducing those into standard, and we don't want to have a situation like where that run-in where we had Throne of Eldraine, Theros Beyond Death, Ikoria. We don't want to be in that kind of situation again because we're going to be banning every other month.
Since we're on the topic, I mean, this I think goes nicely into what I think you said, Devin. What I heard you say is like, for these sets to sell well, they have to have some cards people want. And I think formerly that would have been the argument would be by people like us, well, they have to have some push stuff, or they have to have some commander cards or some hot reprints or something like that, right? And I think what we have perhaps learned in the last week, again from Rosewater's post, is that look, people just buy stuff because they like it. Like buying, like, a much larger audience of people is buying stuff because they think it's cool. Like, Bloomborough is selling really well. Of course, it is a pretty good set in terms of usefulness and power, but a lot of people just like it because it's cute and it's cool and the art's good and like the theme is resonating with people. And I think like Rosewater basically in this post, and again, I don't think we have time to like really digest it, but he's kind of like, look, people bought this stuff. We've done research. We tested out this concept of Universes Beyond. And it tested really well. It sold really well. And that means that it's now not just a concept, it is the execution. Like we're executing on this concept and making it standard as well. And 3 times a year as well. And our thinking is that people will keep buying the stuff if they like it. And my initial reaction was kind of like, so what does that mean in terms of like, Magic players buying this, right? Like, are they like, I like Spider-Man, but I don't really care about, Final Fantasy. And so like what, they just skip the next set? And I think the answer is yes. Like, I think the answer is yes, and WotC doesn't care. I think the answer is like, WotC will do whatever research they need to do to be like, what percentage of people are going to buy this? What are our sales estimates on this IP? And select ones they think will just kind of do well, whether or not, 30% of the people don't like it. And I think that's kind of what Magic is designed around now, which is like whether or not it's something that we're all super fond of, right? I think that's the idea is we're going to sell stuff because people like buying it, whether or not they're the kind of Magic players that we see ourselves as. And that doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if I don't see myself as that type of player because more people do than don't.
I think the big issue with somebody just opting out of, like you said, the Final Fantasy product specifically is that if the product is clearly going to be geared towards or designed with standard play in mind. So the people who would want Final Fantasy most likely are the people who are engaged with standard. So if you're engaged enough with standard to where you're like, okay, well, I'm paying attention to all these new releases and they print a bunch of really good cards in the Final Fantasy set, the way that standard is constructed, you can't really ignore it. You have to engage with those cards in some fashion. You can't just be like, oh,
you do.
This is the
Devin.
best card in the format, but
You do, but more players don't, is the thing.
Well, I guess what I mean is that if you're bringing more players into the game via standard, then eventually those players will have to say, okay, well, I need to pay attention to this stuff, is I guess my point.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not the case.
I do think there's a positive point of view to some of the messaging that they provided since the announcement was made official, which is there's a clear strategic pipeline of getting people to stay in the game through standard and competitive play, as opposed to being a commander first product and like a commander first pipeline. Since I do think like for us as commentators, for a long time, we've been under the impression that like commander drives a lot of Magic's product and acquisition strategy. And they're telling us here that like, no, we want people to stay in the game because we want people to care about standard and we want people to compete. And like, I like that is the motivation, even if I don't love that their approach next year is going to be, we're going to get people to pay attention to us because we know they like Spider-Man.
Yeah, at least partially, right? Like, I mean, it's not to say that they're de-emphasizing Commander, right? But they're re-emphasizing standard.
Sure.
And I think that is kind of a positive message in some way. I didn't mean to like take us all the way down this way. So maybe we should call it on this discussion because it's going to be ongoing. But I was just curious what you all thought about the direct to modern stuff that we all hold so dear.
Especially Devin.
Sam, would you like to talk about some direct to modern cards for a little bit? Because I think you have a few to discuss.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
So the best thing that Stan taught me on Sunday was when we went to an RCQ is that Wingstop is pretty good.
Very good.
I have no idea.
And you live so close to one. You probably live close to several.
I guess I have a new place to go. You know, my wife was looking at me today and said, I just want a place that has great chicken tenders by us. And I was like, if I got a place for you. I know a guy.
You know my friend Stan?
Yeah. Today, my son was asking me all about you for some reason.
Was asking about me?
Yeah. How long have you guys been friends? And like all this kind of stuff. How did you meet? And
I was like, define friends. Well, it's more like a professional colleague.
Is this the same kid who cried because I took you away from the family on Sunday to play?
No,
Magic?
different child.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, Stan.
David.
We went to an RCQ on Sunday, and you've already tipped your hand in several different ways.
Yeah.
What happened?
I finally won.
Yeah. Not only saw the first 5 rounds of domination, I suppose, which was really 3 rounds of dominations and 2 IDs.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you get if you win the first 3 rounds.
That's right. This was a long time coming. I've been playing the RCQ Modern and Pioneer season since the beginning. I guess in the beginning it was just open season and I would play all the Modern tournaments. And then when it became format seasons, I would get really engaged in the Modern and Pioneer ones. And a few times last year in Manchester, I got close. Like I made several top 8s, but never made the finals. And I finally broke the curse.
Yay. We're all clapping for you.
Thank you. I played a friend of the show, Young Dingo's latest Boros Energy list, which I believe Dingo took to win a Secret Lair showdown in Vegas and took home a dark ritual, a big dark ritual and a little dark ritual.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one of the reasons why I use this particular list is because I am a member of Dingo's Patreon, and he provides sideboard guides, which I find very useful to save a little bit of brain power. And I played his list so I could use a sideboard guide. I will say, though, I did make the smallest change possible, which is I cut one Ragavan to play 2 so that I can play 23 lands, specifically a 3rd Arena of Glory.
Oh, what's up, Jerry? Is that you?
I'm Stanislav. All that aside, I have put together a tournament report that I want to break up into 3 parts.
Here we
which
go.
are lessons learned and observations, followed by a match recap, and finally, overall format thoughts. I encourage feedback and discussion through all of my segments.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it.
Starting with lessons learned and observations, I played a deck that had 0 lightning bolts, which we discussed. I think this was on mic briefly last week. Maybe it was after we turned off the recording, but no bolts in Boros Energy, in Dingo's Boros Energy, and he's kind of like alone in this. I was reviewing a lot of other deck lists, and people are still playing them, but he made the argument that it's just not good enough in a more combo-heavy metagame where people are attacking Boros Energy. Bolt doesn't really line up very well in that format.
Yeah, and I think that some of the more popular Mardu lists that have been popping up are also Bolt lists. They're playing Discharge, Thoughtseize, and some of them have Fatal Push main deck, but not all of them. But mostly it's just Discharge and Thoughtseize, no Bolts.
Yeah. And I will say that playing without bolts, it did have a cost, but ultimately I thought the cost was very affordable. And in this tournament, there was only one match where I would have liked access to bolt, which was the Mirror. I'll talk more about that match. But the rest of my games, bolt would have been generally kind of low impact against Domain Zoo twice, Zombie Combo, Grinding Breach, and Eldrazi. I was fine not having access to Lightning Bolt. Second lesson learned, mulliganing is overpowered. And this is a shout out to someone who doesn't know me, or probably maybe doesn't even know that our show exists, but Mason Clark's voice from his podcast was in my ear, whispering in my ear when I was looking at opening hands that
Stan,
take a mulligan. You have to ship any hand that isn't really, really good.
So you were shipping somewhat aggressively, do you think, as a result of that, or more aggressively than usual?
Yeah, I was shipping playable hands if they didn't feel like they were touching Boros Energy's potential, which we know is like the ceiling on a Boros Energy opener is like a ton of power on turn 2 or 3. Right? And like,
yeah, I mean, let me tell you, I the first round that I played in this RCQ, I got absolutely housed by Boros Energy, two games back to back, where it just felt like never had enough card advantage to catch up. And I even Toxic Deluged someone on turn 3 on the draw. On the draw, I guess. No, maybe I was on the play. And they still had like a ton of, they had like 5 creatures out when I Toxic Deluged them on turn 3, and I lost. Yeah. Like mega lost still.
Yeah. My next lesson learned and observation was that Graveyard Hate and Blood Moons were my most important sidebar cards, at least in this tournament. But I also had like a ton of modal spells, and I found that this deck utilized modal spells very well because post-board, you kind of just need a slight edge to get around opponents' plans or disruption. And a modal spell that, like, every modal spell now is just a charm, where it's just like choose one of 3 modes. And it's like whether it's Exercise or Untimely Malfunction, they're effectively charms, just with a different name. Just having like access to like one random effect that's powerful circumstantially was kind of like what this deck ultimately needed in its post-board plans. But time and time again, I was just going back to either Mana Disruption with Blood Moon or Graveyard Disruption, because like some of the random combo-centric decks that I was facing against were utilizing the Graveyard as a resource. And I think that's one way to surprise the Boros deck and player.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed the more I play the energy deck is how just completely busted of a card Thraben Charm is.
Yeah.
It's one that like we really didn't talk a ton of early on, like spoiler season. It's like, maybe this comes up, and it just has so much utility that it's like I've even seen people main deck that card before.
Can I remind people what Thraben Charm does really quickly? It's a generic and a white for an instant. Choose one. Thraben Charm deals damage equal to twice the number of creatures you control the target creature. The next mode is destroy target enchantment. The mode after that is exile any number of target players' graveyards. So multiple people if you need it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's so broken about this?
It's good against Flage. It's good against enchantments like Urza Saga. It's good against Static Prison. It can kill Sun Cleanser in the Mirror, which is if people are still playing it, which not all lists are, but if people are playing it, you can't discharge it. You can like Static Prison it, but only for a couple turns. So it's a clean answer to that. But it's mostly just like the ability to pop their Static Prison or exile their Flage.
There you go. For 2 mana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just so flexible.
At instant speed. I had...
Yeah, definitely was underwhelming when we read it, but it's interesting to see that it does fit somewhere.
Yeah. I had one match where my opponent minused a flipped Tamio, and with the target on the stack, I Thraben Charmed them, and it was like, what are you going to do now? They couldn't do anything.
He's leveling up.
Yeah. My next observation in lessons learned, I won multiple games by casting Gigantha with an exerted Arena of Glory and then giving it +2/+2 and flying on that turn.
I'm sorry, you did? Really?
Multiple games.
Breach. Gigantha's the nuts, man.
That is wild to me. I had not seen anybody mention this particular line, and it's been a while since I played Energy, so when I saw this in the notes, I was like, you what?
Yeah.
7/7 flying attacker, boom, done.
Haste. Yeah.
Haste, yeah.
Well, that's why you played the third arena.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, look, it costs...
What does the third arena have to do with it?
You draw Arena more frequently.
Okay.
I feel like Gigantha is just like uncuttable. I know Jerry made a case for cutting it so that you could play Skyclave Apparition. I have not found a compelling reason to do that. The one that I'm willing to entertain is in the post-board games against Eldrazi, when you bring in Charmaw. You can't reveal Gigantha then because Charmaw has red pips. And maybe in those situations, Gigantha is just less impactful than the land disruption plus threat that Charmaw provides. But in so many other circumstances, especially in attrition games where people are just trying to like pick off as many of your creatures as possible, like having that late game Gigantha that you can not infrequently haste in and occasionally give flying and a buff to, just made Gigantha feel like a really powerful and sometimes surprising closer.
It's pretty funny you mentioned that because when I played the RCQ that I won, I played Jerry's list with 4 Skyclaves, and I was like, I played a couple of mirror matches, and every time that I got the Skyclave, their Flage, their One Ring, like it was fantastic. But over the past couple of weeks, I don't know why, but I'm kind of with you. I've been playing a lot more Gigantha and less Skyclave, so I don't know if it was like that specific weekend that Skyclave was good, but it was pretty good that one weekend when I played it. So,
and then finally, I've been feeling this a lot over the last few weeks of playing Modern and RCQs with this deck, but I just like constantly feel like Ajani is just weirdly the least impactful card in the deck. In part because like it's getting tagged by a ton of spell snares. People just know if you kill Ajani, like a 2/1 cat token is not that important in the grand scheme of things. It's hard to actually get him online. When you do get him online, sure, he's very good at producing more bodies and sometimes doing additional burn damage. But like the best thing about Ajani I found was when you got lucky playing the slots and you amped Raptor into Ajani and then you're just like paying 2 mana for a 3-for-1 at the floor that's potentially like exceeds the 3-for-1 rate because you are able to make more tokens in a longer game.
I don't know. I think Johnny's busted.
Oh, look, I don't disagree. I'm just saying, like, it's really hard to get him to
Yeah, I
do the
gotcha.
thing because everyone is so scared of him that it's like you always kill Gaida Souls and you always kill a Johnny.
Were you ever in situations where you could like there's some lines that I'll take where I'll like choose to play a different 2-drop and then the turn after like play a Johnny with a mana left over so I could have the ability to just discharge my own creature? Did that ever come up for you or anything like that? Like sequencing?
Not this tournament. Like there are those, I've had those games over the last few months where I'm like trying to find ways to flip my Johnny on demand. It's one of the reasons why I like playing Goblin Bombardment and don't really gravitate to the Bamzing list because Bamzing doesn't believe in bombardment, but I love being able to do that on demand with a Johnny. But you kind of have to line it up, and I've not tried to use a removal spell to do that in recent memory. Maybe I should. Okay, in terms of my tournament report, I only lost 3 games during this tournament.
That's how you win tournaments.
Granted, I only played 6 matches.
Well, when you win the first 3, that's your right.
That's right.
Isn't it?
Round 1, I played against Rumble Eldrazi. I went 2-0. When I mentioned this to Dave at the event, and maybe like some other people, their eyes kind of widened because I guess Eldrazi is considered a tougher matchup. And I must have gotten pretty lucky too because I had back-to-back very explosive starts with big boards plus relevant interaction, and my opponent just kind of struggled to establish a meaningful threat. Game 2, I got them under a Blood Moon, and they were chaining the One Rings. They played like 2 or 3 in a row. I actually think they played 3 the One Rings, and whip flared me, and it still wasn't enough for them to take the game. I was able to just kind of like rebuild quickly enough and flage for the kill eventually before they could like cobble together some kind of mana to do anything.
I haven't seen a whip flare in a long time.
Yeah, interesting card.
Maybe it was Pyroclasm. Like I saw both whip flares and Pyroclasms throughout the tournament, so I'll use those maybe somewhat interchangeably. Round 2, I played a buddy of mine, Greg, who was on the Golgari Zombie combo with like Marionette Apprentice and Gravecrawler and the other card that makes it a combo. I went 2-1 here. He took a game from me, and it was an unexpected matchup, but I had a ton of graveyard hate here, bringing it back to one of my lessons learned, like graveyard hate proving to be pretty important. That allowed me to both keep him off the combo, and then my creatures just generally kind of like outnumbered and outclassed his creatures in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
He never was able to combo off against me in our match, and the game he won, he actually just won by doing a fair thing with back-to-back Bowmasters, like keeping my threats at bay and then kind of overrunning me. And then I did the exact same thing when in the games I won. So that led me to match 3, which is against Zoe Riederman, a name we might recognize as an NRG
Good player.
threat. Yeah. Zoe was on Domain Zoo, and this was another 2-1. I will say, and Devin, I wonder what you think here. On the Boros side, I really like the Domain matchup. I feel like I've played against it 5 or 6 times this RCQ season in paper, and I don't think I've ever lost a match.
I think if they start Leyline Scion, it's very difficult. But if they don't start Leyline Scion, then I think you're a pretty big favorite.
Yes, I agree. I have beaten, not this tournament, I have beaten a Leyline Scion opener, but like I had to really work for it of like eventually finding a static prison to deal with the Leyline and then like using Guide of Souls to make a flyer that's bigger than a Scion. Like you really just have to dig for it. But I agree, like Leyline Scion is the thing that deck needs to beat you. Otherwise, your deck can be wide enough and your interaction can be effective enough that you just outvalue them in a fair game.
Yep. Yeah, that's been basically my take on the matchup.
Zoe was able to take a game from me, even though I Blood Mooned her, because through a Blood Moon, she cast Gigantha, used Gigantha to play Leyline, and then got her mana back online and flaged me there.
Surprise.
Yeah. But, short of the Leyline Scion opener, I also sometimes feel like Flage is a really important card for them in the matchup, and vice versa, sure. But, like, they're a little bit too slow to escape a Flage. Like, they don't have as many means to fill their graveyard, and Boros can stomach one Lightning Helix. Like, that's not really a problem in the end. And then, yeah, matches 4 or 5, I had back-to-back IDs to enter top 8 in 5th place. Quarterfinal match. This is, I would actually say, the second most important match of the tournament for me. It was against 5-color Underworld Breach. I went 2-1 here.
Mm-hmm.
This was a rematch, deck and player, from last week. My opponent in this match last week knocked me out of top 4 contention. And after we played that match a week ago, he actually told me that Blood Moons were very good against him because I kind of erroneously sided them out. We had a weird match where it wasn't abundantly clear to me that they were on like a 4 or 5 color deck. Like, at first I thought they were just on Is It Breach or Is It Underworld Breach because of like the texture of our game 1. Long story short, I took the advice that this opponent provided for me a week ago, coupled with the fact that Dingo Cyborg Guide actually had a plan for this matchup, which was super helpful. And this Cyborg Guide actually highlighted how important both Graveyard Hate and Blood Moons are. More so than just like artifact disruption to deal with their grinding station or whatever. And I got there. Very tough match though. Game 3 was actually crazy. I kept a risky 1-lander because I had Surgical and 1-drops.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, my opponent lost game 3 with 2 cards in their deck because I did an early Surgical Extraction on their grinding station, and then I put down a Blood Moon, which, like, if you take them off the grinding station combo, their next best threat is Urza Saga. So with a Blood Moon down, Urza Saga is air.
Not real.
It's not real.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just goes away.
Yeah.
Poof.
The games are really interactive though. Like, they have spell snares and removal. So it even though I like kind of effectively locked them out of the game, they were digging for prismatic ending to try to like deal with my Blood Moon, and also keeping me at bay before I can like really build a big enough board to actually kill them. And plus, like, I'm trying to kill them with a bunch of 1/1s, and they had flipped a Tamio. They're playing the One Ring and Tamio, so it's like really easy for them to flip it. And then they just plus Tamio, and like all of my creatures are just attacking for 0 power. And then they were smart enough to use their removal on like the big creatures that could actually do the thing. So it was very long, it was very grindy, and eventually I kind of got there, but like 100% luck helped me in this matchup. Probably the scariest match of the day. And maybe you guys will even recall, like, I've had multiple top 8 dreams crushed by this deck over the years. Last year when I was grinding Rhinos, like, Devin, you were giving me really good advice after Underworld Breach knocked me out of another top RCQ top 8. And you're like, yeah, you kind of can't rely just on endurance and like the Rhinos Breach matchup. Like, they have like all these avenues of attack, and I was just like, it's just a tough deck, and like when the player knows what to do with it, like they can cobble a win through like a combo control strategy. So actually getting there this time was like so rewarding.
I want to make a very, very quick aside because you mentioned Rhinos. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Violent Outburst is in the Jumpstart product for Foundations, which means it's going to be on Arena, and Crashing Footfalls is already on Arena from special guests.
Ooh.
So if you're interested in arenaing, perhaps we can.
What does that go into? Like,
Rhinos?
what's the fake format? That's just
Historic.
everything, maybe?
Timeless,
Timeless.
historic, that kind of stuff. But anyways, that's an episode, maybe a timeless episode down the road. No,
Maybe down the road.
Devin, if you want to derail this episode to talk about Rhinos, I will do that.
no.
Okay, moving on. Semifinals. Played against a friend of the pod, Dan Silvertude, one of our patrons, who was on Zoo. In fact, Dan and I were wearing matching Dive Down t-shirts.
Did you
Lovely.
swear
Nice.
Dan to secrecy? Because it was not leaked on the Discord that you won.
He did not see the finals, is my understanding. Dan left before the final.
That's correct. I mean, I already shared my thoughts on the Zoo matchup. Also, I think Dan would probably agree that I had very crazy starts that made it particularly hard for his deck to just keep up with me. Game 2, he did have a turn 0 lane line. I'm on the draw, and I was able to static prison it on turn 1.
Nice.
And just basically cut off any chance he had of keeping up with me. And yeah, easy matchup. Not because Dan is bad, but because I think I'm a little bit favored. I will admit, I don't know if I've ever said this on the pod, as a influencer and content creator, I hate losing to listeners and fans. I feel like they lose respect for me if they beat me. Because it's like, why would I listen to your podcast if I'm crushing you in tournaments?
I've definitely lost respect every time I've beaten you, yes.
I guess we'll see what Dan's friend Zach, who was there, who beat me, thinks. We had a lovely match, Demir Murktide mirror match, and he beat me. So hopefully he didn't lose respect for me, Zach. He did follow me on Twitter afterwards, so I think that's a mark of respect, maybe?
And then the finals. This was the Boros mirror against against a very friendly opponent. We had a very funny game 1 where we were just like literally casting the same spells back to back several turns in a row.
That's funny.
And it was kind of like this slap fight where we both had goblin bombardments on the board, and just like every time someone would point a removal spell at a creature, we'd bombardment to the face or to something else, and it was just like pinging each other into oblivion.
Yeah. Did you play against the person that I played in the first round by any chance?
Was it Ted?
Ted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, so the guy that I lost to in the first round met up with you in the finals. I got to feel pretty good about that, right?
I mean, transitive property equality, baby. You're basically there.
Exactly. It means I came in third. I'll say fourth after Silver Dude.
Yeah. And like the post board plan against Boros is you take out your blood moons, obviously. But I ended up in this position in game 1 where I drew my main deck blood moon, and they only had non-basics out. So I escaped a flage and then blood moon their flages out.
Whoops.
Yeah. So that was pretty
Perfection.
That's nice.
That was really cool. And then game 2 was actually like a blur for me for emotional reasons and just because of the texture of the game. It was one of those games where I could just like tell pretty early on that I was always ahead and never really lost tempo. They did try to post-board Skyclave against my threats. And it's like, here we go, Skyclave good in the mirror. And all that ended up doing is just giving me vanilla 2/2s and 3/3s, even though like they Skyclaved a Flage, and it's like, okay, fine, I just have a 3/3 illusion now because I can kill a Skyclave with another Flage and BD. Ahead of my final turn, I had my opponent at 1 life. And even though I actually don't remember the specifics exactly, I was in a position where I felt like I couldn't attack for lethal. Like I needed to go upstairs somehow. And I had the One Ring under a prison. I keep wanting to say like prismatic prison, but I know that's not what it is.
Static prison.
I had the One Ring under a static prison, and I was like, but I only had Flage and 4 other cards in my graveyard. So I was like doing the math, like and setting up this stupid line where I had to like decline to pay the energy on a static prison, so it would go into my graveyard to be my 5th card because the One Ring fog trigger doesn't happen if it ETBs without being cast. Yada yada yada. I had this whole thing mapped out on a Charlie from Always Sunny crazy wall, but then I just drew a Goblin Bombardment and was able to sacrifice a token to deal the 1 in the end.
That's
it. Was easy.
Love to see it.
And yeah, and I won 2-0. It was very emotional. I had to like kind of close my eyes and hide my face for a minute because this is something I've wanted for a few years now. And it was also kind of bittersweet because it was like 7:30 p.m. Everyone had left. The room was just me, my opponent, one of their friends, the judge, and the tournament organizer. But my opponent was very gracious, and we chatted about decks briefly. And then I took an Uber home and I read bedtime books to my kid.
That's the real best part of your day, Stan.
Wow, what a Sunday.
Yeah.
And you got to split chicken fingers with me.
That was really tasty. We had a little picnic in the sunlight.
We did.
On a beautiful autumn day in Oak Park.
You'll love to see it.
Amazing. Stan, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I know it's been a journey.
Congrats, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the ones you want to spike, right? You know what I mean? Like you take advantage of like running hot, being in the zone. You know what I mean? Like that's how you win any tournament, right? Like it's a combination, and I know this from my deep experience of winning tournaments, by the way. Combination of luck and skill, luck, skill, victory, right?
You're not wrong. And like I had to make a lot of mistakes in the weeks leading up to this to learn from them to play better on Sunday. Like I will admit, like after the Universes Beyond news, I wasn't super motivated to practice, and I was telling Dave, like, I'm only going to this tournament if you're going. And we were like kind of joking, like this kind of feels like the farewell tour.
I forgot about that. You said you're only going if I'm going.
And that's the other thing. Like, it's one of those things, this feels like an example of like, you finally get the thing you want when you stop caring about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wasn't like tanking on like all the feelings associated with playing in RCQ. I was just kind of like there to do my best and have fun with my friend. And like I learned enough lessons along the way that I managed to play reasonably well and get lucky and capitalize on the luck. And here we are.
You'll love to see
doing
it.
a hilarious cold
when
open where I'm reading the invite letter that I won at the end of the day.
When you win the regional championship in Portland, I'll see you at the Pro Tour.
Oh, I can't wait, man.
Wow.
Because I'm going
Listen to
to win
that.
Charlotte.
I mean, look, I'm trying to set very realistic expectations for myself. The goal was always to win an RCQ. Like that's kind of the level that I felt like I could reach. You have to set a new goal for yourself when you exceed the first goal, and it's like I think it would be really cool to day 2 the RCQ, but I know it's going to be the biggest tournament I've ever played in, and I know it's probably going to be against the hardest competition I've ever played in, certainly in paper. So we'll put in the work. We're going to talk about what that work might look like. But yes, I don't have any misconceptions about my potential for my very first RC. It could happen, but
You're going to crush it.
But likelihood is low.
We'll do some testing. You're going to crush it, I believe.
What do you guys think the next step is from here? I mean, just out of curiosity, so the tournament's in February, right? It's the first weekend of February. Devin, how are you? You've been queued for a couple of weeks and you've done this a couple times before. How do you usually approach it?
I mean, honestly, the RCs that I've been playing in, we have like a bunch of like New England locals that we're going to Discord together, and we kind of just like talk about stuff and do some testing and share deck lists. But that's pretty much the extent of what I do. I don't do like, a ton of hardcore like one-on-one testing. It's mostly just like leagues and trying out new stuff and chatting with like-minded individuals. That's the most important part, is just like surrounding yourself with a bunch of people that maybe are also qualified, that have the same intentions and same goals as you, and just like people who want to do well. And those are the people that you want to have the conversations with.
Can you get Stan an invite to conversate to any Discords where people care? Because ours is filled with less people who have queued.
We have Grant.
I could check around.
There's certainly people, and I'm being silly. There's certainly people in the Dive Down Discord who queued in, and even in DC, I feel like we had the most that we've ever had. In this most recent one, there were a half dozen of people hanging around in the Dive Down Discord who were all there together at the same time, and of course Devin was there too, on the right deck, as we said. Stan, how are you thinking about trying to do this? From kind of switching quickly a bit from, hey, maybe I'm going to take a little bit of a pause on being super competitive and contemplate things, to, okay, now I have this big tournament to prep for.
Well, it's this tricky thing of like, it's hard to say what the format's going to look like come February. We have a BNR in December. We have Foundations coming out. Portland is pre-release weekend for Aether Drift.
Is that what it is? I was going to ask you if you had looked yet.
It's a full week before open release, which is this pre-release weekend, which I think that just means like there will, like, unless someone cracks like something insane and buys like 3 boxes to like pull the cards necessary to do something brand new and unexpected, like I don't think you really have to worry about the new set for a pre-release weekend RC.
But does that mean that it's just Foundations really then?
Yeah. And BNR.
BNR. Oh, and a BNR. Yes. Yeah, well.
Yeah.
I mean, we all kind of think that.
We'll see.
We all kind of think the One Ring is probably going to get banned in December, right? Is that the assumption right now?
I think so.
I think that's the hope.
I think so.
The hope.
We'll
least for
see.
me.
I hope it's just the One Ring. Like the other note I have here, it's my airing of grievances. Playing like 4 or 5 RCQs this season, post Nadu ban, the bulk of them being post Nadu ban, where like energy
I have
decks have
forgotten
been,
that Nadu existed.
yeah, and for
Same.
easy to forget now that we can't even play it in Commander. You overhear a lot of chatter of like what needs to go in Boros Energy. And setting aside my obvious bias, it drives me kind of nuts, specifically because of the Fury ban and the context behind the Fury ban. I was looking back at the language when that happened, and the reason people wanted Fury gone and the reason why they got rid of Fury was because they wanted creature decks to be better. And Fury kind of like kept them out of the format. And they got what they wished for. Like Fury is gone. We have several really successful creature decks in the format now. And now there's discussion about like banning something because these creature decks are too good. And I just feel like you can't have it both ways. So I don't know, like, what I want in December? I want either the One Ring banned and or Fury unbanned. Like, if you're concerned about energy, rather than shrinking the format, I think you try to expand it by bringing back Fury and acknowledge like maybe the Fury ban was wrong in the first place because Grief was the real problem. We got Grief out of the way. Now let's see what Fury can do. And maybe that means Rhinos is back on the menu. Like, I'll be glad to play Rhinos in February if I can.
Hey, I'm just saying, Violent Outburst in Foundation's Jumpstart. They could maybe do a little unbanning of Violent Outburst in Modern, maybe? Just saying.
I approve. I'll notarize that letter of recommendation.
I never sold mine.
I'm there with you.
I got him in the sleeves.
I don't know if I sold mine. I probably did. I'm not.
I mean, they're like
precious
$1,
about that.
so.
Cool. Well, thank you for letting me share that experience. I was so happy. Imagine me waking up on Monday morning, just beaming with excitement.
What was your partner's reaction? Your lovely wife.
She was very happy for me.
Was she happy for you? That's
She
great.
told her parents about it. My father-in-law texted me congratulations.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
That's so good.
She's been very supportive of my dream, and I think she was both happy that we did it and probably relieved.
I was going to say, she's like, oh, good.
A few more
We got there.
weekends free.
Exactly.
Well, Stan, if you want to start testing, you let me know. I'm down. We can have some testing sessions.
Devin, I want to start testing. I'm letting you know.
Okay. Should we wait until the beta announcement?
I'm happy to get into it too if you guys want. I'll be the other side.
You know what we could do? We could just test the decks without the One Ring.
Now that's a theory.
Because we already know what they look like with the ring, right?
Yeah.
It's a rogue strategy.
Maybe that could be episode 301. The Road to RC Season 3, Episode 2, or whatever they call it.
I think it's like season 8 or something. I don't even know.
Well, Stan, you have to keep us posted. But good work. You have made the RC.
Grazie.
Let's talk about your next step, which is the Magic World Championship. So
Me
it's
and
only
Javier Bardem. Or no,
yeah, just
not Javier
it's
Bardem.
Javier Bardem.
Also now Javier Bardem is playing Magic.
yeah, he did quite well. So Magic World Championship 30 happened this past weekend. Perhaps you watched, perhaps you kept up with it on CNN, perhaps you didn't even know, but it did happen. And 113 of the world's best players competed for a $1 million prize pool, the chance to be on their own real deal Magic card. Maybe they can even be Squidward. Yeah, you never know.
Maybe even you could be Squidward.
I mean, we can dream. Most of these competitors earned their spots through good performances at like the recent Pro Tours like Murders at Karlov Manor, Thunder Junction, MH3. Players there, reigning champ Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, player of the year Simon Nielsen, household names if your household has a Magic player in it like Kai Buda, Seth Manfield, Shota Yasuoka, Reed Duke, many people. that you probably know. The formats were Duskborn House of Horror Booster, Draft, and Standard constructed. The top 8 was also Standard. So, Frank and Frank's friends did God's work breaking down the metagame, although it was 113 people. Pretty straightforward, I would hope. I hope people didn't name their decks tricky things. I'm going to read the deck, like percentage of the field, and then a little bit about how these decks work, because we don't talk a lot about Standard, and I think there's some cool decks here. I'm not going to read like all these card text boxes, so forgive me if you don't know this card, because I probably don't either, unless I was looking at the deck list. So 20 people, about 17.7% of the field, were on Gruul Prowess, which is a pretty straightforward aggro creature spell deck. You know, cast some mice, some birds, and some monks, and get in there. Dimir Midrange was right behind it at 14.2%, and that's probably what you don't want to see if you're on Gruul Prowess. It's a bunch of creature removal, spree-based counter spells like Phantom Interference, 3 Steps Ahead, which also kind of double as like creature spells themselves, or card draw, lots of value blockers, and then endgame conditions to close the door, like Enduring Curiosity.
I just want to make a quick note on Gruul Prowess. I know that 3 of the competitors played Leyline of Resonance in the event, and I don't know for certain if those are separate from the 17.7% of Gruul Prowess. So just keep that in mind. 3 people did register the Leyline of Resonance, kind of the more all-in Prowess version.
Mm-hmm. After that, at 11.5%, 13 players, on Azorius Oculus, which kind of looks like the standard version of the Dimir Oculus deck we talked about in Modern. So it has ways to like mill yourself in Picklock Prankster, Founding the Third Path, random ways to get more cards like out of your hand and into the yard, like Chart a Course and Moment of Truth. And then these mana value 3 or less reanimation spells like Helping Hand and Recommission. And then Mild Interaction to help you get there, like Get Lost, Into the Flood Maw. Haughty Djinn is like your creature backup to give you some redundant attacking. Also takes advantage of your graveyard, makes some of your instants and sorceries cheaper. This deck looks really cool. It looks like Dimir Oculus.
It's also worth noting that these decks before Oculus played a lot of Monastery Mentors, which, if you're not familiar with Standard, you might be surprised to hear that that's legal, but it was in March of the Machines.
Right.
And they've kind of sort of swapped the Monastery Mentors for the Oculus because it's a much more sticky threat, provides immediate advantage even the turn you tap out for it. So, but a lot of them do still have Mentor in the sideboard,
Sure.
because when you're going all in on Oculus and Djinn, you do make yourself a lot weaker to graveyard hate.
Yes. Domain Ramp, 11.5% as well. This looks like domain control to me. You know, sweepers, temporary lockdown, Sunfall, Leyline Binding, Get Lost, Soul Partition, Elspeth Smite, like interaction, Up the Beanstalk, bunch of big good creatures like Overlord of the Hauntwoods and Beza the Bounding Spring and Atraxa and Overlord of the Mistmoors. Like, there is some ramp here, but it's not like aggressive ramping. Like, there was only just like a few Herd Migration and Analyze the Pollen in Greg Orange's list, so it's leaning on like the 3 mana Overlord of the Hauntwoods enter trigger to do some ramp there as well. So it looks just like, domain control with a little bit of ramp. Temur Prowess up next. This was kind of out of nowhere, I think. 9 players brought it. Probably, I'm guessing, some team. I did not watch World's coverage, by the way. So 9 players, 8%. This is not just Gruul Prowess splashing blue. It's, in fact, a combo deck. And I can't do this deck justice, so Frank describes it as such. It is capable of storming off with explosive turns. You can tap Valley Floodcaller for mana with the help of Enduring Vitality. Cast a non-creature spell, untap the Otter, tap it for mana again, and continue the cycle. Wealth of Interaction and card draw spells. Generate an impressive number of prowess triggers in a single turn. So like you can get a lot of Otters on the battlefield that are tapping for mana and like do things like loop Storm Chaser's Talent. And this town ain't big enough, which I don't know what that card does, infinitely often.
Yeah, I actually played a little bit with this deck today.
Sweet.
This town ain't big enough is a bounce spell. It costs 5 mana, but you can discount it if it costs 2 mana if you target your own stuff. It bounces 2 things. So the idea is once you have the Vitality, which lets all your otters tap for mana, with the Floodcaller, which untaps your otters when you cast a non-creature spell, you can use this town ain't big enough to bounce the Stormchaser's talent, float some mana, replay the talent, untap your otters, use the mana floating to level the talent to get back the this town ain't big enough, rinse, repeat, so on and so forth. But it's cool because you can also just win games with, cast a couple of otters and just here's a couple of spells, and it's enough interaction where you can clear their blockers and just kind of attack them with regular prowess stuff.
I do love attacking with prowess otters. So, yeah, it's a cool deck.
Sweet deck.
Very cool deck. The untapping with spells makes me think of like Jeskai Ascendancy. Does it play like it?
It's got a very, very similar vibe to Ascendancy, where it's like low creature count, but just enough to make sure you're untapping, and has a lot of ways to like creatures that act as spells, like Stormchaser's talent.
Okay. After that, also at 9 copies, Dimir Demons. Unlike Dimir Midrange with like Enduring Curiosity and like the cheaper creatures, this is more of a controlling strategy, goes harder on Archfiend of the Dross, works very well with the now slightly expensive Unholy Annex. There's a little combo of Doomsday Excruciator and Jace the Perfected Mind, which can quickly deck the OP if you get those together. Another 9 copies, I believe. Yeah, Golgari Mid. Black Removal, Duress, Mosswood Dread Knight, Glissa Sunslayer, Caustic Bronco, Archfiend of the Dross, and Unholy Annex. You kind of see where this one's going.
So the only thing that I wanted to mention here, just because we look at the top of the metagame, and you mentioned you didn't watch a ton of Worlds, but I watched every single standard match, and of the matches that I watched, and just seeing the card in play multiple times, I think Unholy Annex might just be the best card in the standard format.
Yeah, so because it's so important, let's read Unholy Annex. It's one of the rooms, correct? I mean, it would make sense.
Yep,
as an annex.
I got it for you. So Unholy Annex, 2 and a black. When you unlock this room, it has sort of this Phyrexian Arena type effect where at the beginning of your end step, you draw a card. If you lose 2 life, if you don't control a demon, but if you do, they lose 2 and you gain 2. And then the 5 mana part of the room, I think it's called a Ritual Chamber, 5 mana, make a 6/6 flying demon. So basically, it curves perfectly where you play the Annex on 3 and then Archfiend on 4. That's curving into the demon. And even just later in the game, you get, hit a bunch of land drops. You have 8 mana. You can just do both of them in the same turn. And it's just like, the card just is a card advantage machine while also presenting a clock. It's really hard to match that card.
Yeah, it reads well for standard, for sure. It looks like a powerful card, especially when combined with Archfiend.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge part of the Pioneer list, too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a super powerful card. It's not modern enough, but it's definitely good enough for Pioneer, even. Sick.
More on that later. So Frank also did all the win rates. Of course, because this was a small tournament with mixed formats, we don't have like the best data in the universe, but some interesting stuff here for sure. Like the best performing deck that had a good number of matches was Azorius Oculus. So it not only looked cool, it played well this past weekend, 40 and 29 for a 58% win rate. And the only poor matchup on the day looks like was versus Golgari Midrange. Frank said that people didn't seem prepared for graveyard strategies. He mentioned the lack of rest in peace in sideboards, but he did also note in his article that Ghost Vacuum was the most popular card from Duskborn, which is just a single mana artifact that you can tap to exile a card from a graveyard. And then I think you can pay like 5 later and then sacrifice it and like get one of the exile cards back.
You pay 6, you get all of them back, but they're 1/1 flyers.
All of them.
That sounds good. So that can definitely take out an Oculus if you were so inclined. And also a 1/1 Oculus sounds fine if it has the text on the card.
That is true. And just going back to highlight Frank's point real quick, because going into this event, I think a lot of people had expected this kind of mono white tokens deck, which was all over the place on Magic Online, to be a big player here. And the mono white tokens deck, I think only one person brought it. So that is a deck that plays a ton of rest in pieces in the board. So that might have something to do with the fact that there was a lack of rest in peace because people just didn't bring the tokens deck.
Behind that was Dimir Midrange at 56.6. Gruul Prowess at 55.4, which says something about Gruul Prowess, because it sure looked like people were prepared to either have mastered it as well as they can or fight against it with like these mid-rangey and like there was just so much removal in all these lists that I looked at, just like 8-10 removal spells. The controlling decks had cheap sweepers, expensive sweepers, interactive spells, so to fight through all that at 55.4 seems pretty darn good. And then beyond that, all the other popular decks were at 50% or below in this tournament. Like Jeskai Convoke, which I didn't even mention before because it's only 5.3% of the field, was an even 50. And then other popular selections like Temur Prowess, Golgari Mid were like around 48, Dimir Demons at 43.8, and Domain Ramp at 41.7. Devin, you probably played a few of these decks. Anything a surprise here to you?
Most of them. No, I mean, the standard. I played a lot of these decks in the past couple of days after the World Championships, and I mean, Javier. I don't want to spoil too much, but Javier was not necessarily a big fan of his deck, and there were some other people I saw some things on Twitter talking about the team that played the Temur Prowess deck, where they like their deck choice, but they recognize that that deck is just incredibly difficult to sequence and play at a very high level. So that could certainly, lead to the win rates as well. Just a very complicated deck. But I mean, a lot of this makes sense. Dimir and Gruul kind of standing out where those are the most consistent decks. And then you see stuff like Jeskai Convoke, Temur Prowess, maybe that Domain Ramp, maybe that has like a very sort of high variance, matchup wise attached to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about this top 8. It's kind of hinted at it. We had, after Swiss, first place was Seth Manfield. Perhaps you've heard of this person. 13-1 on Golgari Ramp. There's no Golgari Ramp on the list of decks I read earlier. Seth's deck looks pretty teched out. It's a bigger Golgari deck than the mid-range offering. It features 4 Up the Beanstalk. And there's a lot of just random looking cards to the casual observer like myself. This looks very metagamed. Main deck cards like 2 Terror Asunder, which is primarily geared towards exiling target artifacts or enchantments for 1 in a green. If you kick it for 1 in a black more, it's any target non-land permanent. Not very efficient there, but can get the job done. Lots of spicy one-offs like Outrageous Robbery, which is like an exile cards from like your opponent's deck and then like play them later type thing. Gix's Command, Pillage the Bog. Like I would do terribly with this deck. Very, very badly.
I just love the way, like you mentioned, this is a very, very unique take on Golgari. I love the way that they designed this deck. I believe Seth and Jim both played it. I don't know if anybody else played it besides those two. But one thing worth noting is in the deck list, Cut Down is a card that is normally very, very good against Golgari. Kills Deep Cavern bad, kills Mosswood Dread Knight. There's a lot of targets. Seth, the way that he constructed his Golgari deck, not a single target for Cut Down. So people who are playing that card main deck now have a dead card against him, which is pretty cool.
Oh, power and toughness 5 or less. Yeah, just literally no targets.
Nothing.
Like even Glissa is a 3/3.
Yep.
And I noticed that Seth has 2 main deck Shieldred here, which is known good card. I noticed that a lot of the other stock decks or decks that people were running, like these mid-range lists, were not running main deck Shieldreds. Like Shieldred was kind of out of this tournament in a lot of these strategies, and I was surprised by that. And Seth was like, I think Shieldred's still pretty good. Let's run this back.
I think a lot of that is because the other mid-range decks are on Annex, and if you're playing Annex, you kind of need to play Archfiend, and it's kind of hard to fit both Archfiend and Shieldred. That's just too many 4s.
Yeah, makes total sense. Second place, Quinn Tunnel, 12-2 on Mono Red Aggro, another list I did not read above. I believe Quinn was the only person on this list, and it is aggro. You've got Monastery Swiftspear, Screaming Nemesis, cool card. Manifold Mouse, Emberheart Challenger, Heartfire Hero, Hired Claw, and then like Shock, Monstrous Rage, Lightning Strike, Witch Stalker, Frenzy, and lands. The end. Sweet deck.
No slick shots.
This looks like something that I would build on a budget on Arena and play best of one.
I found it wild that Quinn didn't play slick shot, but the more that I think about it, it kind of made sense. Just because of how good he needed to make room for Screaming Nemesis, because I don't know if Nemesis is just absurd in red mirrors, because if they ever interact with it whatsoever, whether it's throw a burn spell at it, you get to kill their creature, and if they trade in combat for it, then you get to kill a creature. So like in the Gruul mirrors, that card is just, it's like a 3-for-1. It's so good.
That is dope. Then we get into stuff we talked about before. Marcio Carvalho on Golgari midrange, Ha Fam on Dimir Demons, Javier Dominguez on Dimir Demons, Yoshihiko Ikawa on Gruul Prowess, Max Rappaport on Dimir midrange, and Kai Buddha on Dimir midrange. So, people you may know, names you may have heard. Unfortunately, perhaps to people who are not named Seth Manfield, Kai did lose in the quarters to him, so we didn't see Kai take another Worlds. Some very average players from the Iberian Peninsula, Javier Dominguez and Marcio Carvalho, made the finals. Javier did win it all for the second time. In case you were counting, he finished second in 2017, first in 2018, and then wins it again in 2024. The second player to win Worlds twice. The other is Shahar Shenhar, who won in 13 and 14. Pretty good work there, Javier.
So does Shahar have 2 cards?
They didn't. Did they have?
They weren't doing
invitationals
cards
then?
then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
they weren't.
So they stopped the Invitational in 07, and then I think they brought Worlds cards when Javier won. I think Javier was the first one when they started again.
I see.
Yeah.
With Champion.
Fervent Champion.
Fervent Champion.
Now we get Fervent Champion too.
Yes. The legend continues.
More fervent.
Fervent or champion. I think standard looks cool. Like, you've got aggro, mid-range, control, ramp, combo, all options to explore. I'm into it.
Oh yeah.
I wish I would have watched more.
I basically only been playing standard for the past like 4 or 5 days, and I can't get enough of it. It's so much fun.
That's awesome. It's nice to like, since we're on the topic, like, do you find like standard to, like, one of the things that I've liked about my memory of standard is it gives games more time to develop, and the corner turns are later in the game. You know what I mean? Like, when the advantage bar can shift, and then like how far it can shift is usually not as powerful as something like modern. And so it sort of makes it feel like you're just in more games. Do you feel like that's the case in the standard you're experiencing?
In most of them, yeah. I think in the games that don't involve specifically Heartfire Hero, that is the case. But it's it's really hard to avoid it when that card is involved. It's just that, when that card is cast on turn 1, you have to like rethink your entire outlook on what you were planning on doing in the course of the first couple of turns. But I really, really enjoy the mid-range mirrors, like Dimir against Golgari, the Dimir mirror matches. They're some of the most fun Magic that you can have right now.
Sounds sweet. Yeah, in my arena so far has been really old Explorer decks. So I will talk about that in a second, but I'm looking forward to figuring out which standard deck I can build that looks most fun for me for the fewest number of wildcards, and then go to town. So that's Worlds. My friends, we're gonna have a quick wind down segment. And I'll make it as efficient as possible, because we are at about an hour 25 already. But I feel slightly obligated to do this sort of this is not quite sponsored content, it's promotional content, because I reached out to Valve and I was like, hey Valve, I reached out to like their media relations email page or whatever, and I was like, yo, we have a podcast.
This is an all-timer email.
Did you read it?
No, but I'm just saying what you accomplished with this email.
It worked out quite well. So I reached out to Valve and I was like, Valve, friends, I have a podcast. It's surprisingly moderately successful. We get about X number of people listening a week. with wide total downloads. And we play Magic, and you know what you can play Magic on is your Steam Deck, your portable handheld computer thing. And I was like, you know, we would love to have some for the podcast. And they're like, we can probably send you one. And I was like, that's okay.
No thanks.
Fine, I accept.
I like that you went in there hot with like, we'd love to have multiples.
I mean, you don't get what you don't ask for, David. That's what I always say.
I guess that's true.
And so they sent me one. they were like, they just sent me like the best one that they make. And so now we have two in the fold of the Dive Downers.
I mean, they're all in your fold.
Well, one's in a box on the way to Stan.
Buongiorno, I will say when I open the
Buongiorno.
box.
He just won an RCQ.
This was the
got a
prize.
prize.
I said let's just buy one with podcast money for you, and you're like, I don't want it.
I don't need one actually. I won't play it, so it's fine. I just like to give you guys the business on the recording.
Well, we have said on a previous episode that Shane and I have been brainstorming how to do a side project in the form of a
Yes.
video game podcast.
And I brought that up to them as well.
And that's still on the table. That did not go by the wayside.
Or in the handheld, perhaps.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what phrase you want to use.
So yeah, if you don't know what the Steam Deck is, it's a handheld PC designed by Valve. Like they run Steam, the game marketplace. You know, they made Half-Life and Portal, stuff like that. It's like a big Nintendo Switch. And it runs like its own custom Linux OS called Steam OS. And it's kind of like using Steam big picture mode all the time. And you play all your Steam stuff, all your Steam library, or even non-Steam games that you can add there. And it's just like a portable computer that plays games quite well. And like, you're like, okay, Shane, it's Linux. How does it run my games? It has like this whole translation layer that's on top called Proton that's been in like Linux development for like ever. And it works insanely well. And it's like even better than Windows often for like really particular weird reasons that makes Proton like sometimes better than Windows. And if you want to get one, which you may after hearing more about this, you can get them on Steam, and like they go from like $400 for the cheapest one to $650 for the most expensive one. And if you just want to add more storage, you just throw a micro SD in there. So thank you, Valve, for sending that over. And in response to your spell of sending the Steam Deck, my reaction is to tell you all what it's like to play Magic Arena on the Steam Deck.
I will mention, like, I've long wanted to play Magic Arena on my Nintendo Switch.
Yes.
And I was pleased when it came to mobile, but like my iPhone screen I don't use the big iPhones.
No, it's too small, even like on a normal size phone.
It's too small.
I have played Magic Online, if you may remember, via TeamViewer on my iPad before while in a hot tub.
Oh, God.
I don't know if you remember any of this happening back in the day. And it works okay.
It's just okay
but-
on mobile devices, I have found.
Yes.
Serviceable, but not ideal.
And so I tested Arena in a lot of constructed matches over the past few days. Like, of course, Best of One Explorer, using my old like Burning Tree Emissary style creature deck with like Torbrand and stuff like that, and it rules. So like you said, I think the biggest benefit is it's much better than playing on my phone. You can like click play and be playing in like 30 seconds versus like 45.
Just 'cause it's
It's just
fast.
faster.
Yeah.
Like it's just it loads faster. Everything's just better. And I have a new Pixel 9. Like it's not it's not like the blazingest phone on the market, but it's a new phone, and it's like 2/3 the time to boot up, and it's just a much better experience because like even on my new phone, it's like 30 frames a second. It's kind of choppy. You can't adjust the visual quality settings, and with the Steam Deck, you can just max it out, like 60 frames on the LCD, 90 frames on the OLED, and it looks sick.
Are you navigating across the battlefield in your hand using the joysticks? How do you like play a card from your hand to the battlefield?
So there
physically?
are multiple ways. So like the controls on the Steam Deck are kind of, and this sounds like a total advertisement, but I would say this if you asked me on the fly because I freaking love my Steam Deck. Like I recently
had one for years.
I recently got so I got it when it came out,
Yeah.
And then I wasn't as much of a gamer as I have been for the past like 3 months or so. And I sold it after about a year. And then I rebought one maybe like 5 weeks ago. And it literally is always within eyesight. You know what I mean? Like it's on my desk when I'm working in case I want to take a break. It's like, I take it to bed before I go to sleep. And anyway, one of the coolest things about the Steam Deck is the control configuration is extremely flexible. And it has 2 like trackpads as options for controls, along with like normal, like, dual analogs and D-pad and stuff like that. So I use the right touchpad as like a trackball. So I can like flick my thumb across it and it moves the cursor. And then you can press on that trackpad to mouse click. And then, so I basically use the trackpad for almost all my interaction, or you can like just touch it like a phone because it's a giant touchscreen as well. So you can play it in kind of whatever fashion floats your boat, or configure it to play however you want. So I do like the controls. I think you can play it however you want. I like the battery life is insane. That's one thing I really don't like about playing Arena on my phone is the battery life is bad. I just like choose through it. Yeah. But yeah, it's great. I think it is a killer app to play on the deck. If you don't want to get a full laptop, if you are like Stan, you're like, I wish I could play it on my Switch, and you like computer games, I would not buy this for Arena specifically. I would buy this if you were a gamer and also like Arena. But it makes me want to play Arena more, and Arena is like an area of interest recently. So I'm gonna be playing it some more. So thank you, Valve, supporting us in our endeavors on the Dive Down and our future video game podcast endeavors. I swear this is coming out, by the way. We've just been getting ready for episode 300, clearing mental space for the project, getting some games in the completed queue to talk about. So it is coming. But Stan, congratulations to you, by the way. I just want to say, you've worked hard on it. You ground it out, and you cracked that nut, baby.
Should we talk about my RCQ some more? Like,
give me the tournament.
Can you explain to me how you shuffled?
Yeah. Did you cast any counter spells?
In details.
I shuffled respectfully of my close friend Martin, who let me borrow his One Rings so that David could also play the One Rings. Dave, how did your RCQ go?
I mean, I had fun. I went 1-4. I won a mirror. I lost a mirror. I lost to Energy, and I lost to Eldrazi. And I think that all of those matchups make sense for playing Frog. I felt like I played pretty well, and like I met some nice people. I met a couple of people, a number of people who were listeners, including having a nice match against Zach, like I said, who was Dan Silverdude's friend. It was good. It was fun to do it. I didn't really feel like I was sharp and like ready to compete, but I felt like I played pretty well for kind of walking in cold with what's essentially not cold, but walking in without a ton of reps on what's essentially a control deck. There was way more Frog at the RCQ than I thought there was going to be. There were 4 players on Dimir Frog out of the 24 players that were there. So 16% of the meta was Frog. I think there might even have been more Frog than there was Energy, depending. One thing that was really interesting, I'll say, is that what was the name of the person who you got the deck list from, Stan?
Young Dingo? Oh, no, your deck list. It's from Richie, our friend Richie.
From Richie. Okay. So Richie, who I do not know, but Stan knows. Yeah. I got the deck list
Richie won the RCQ I played in a week ago with this deck list. The same RCQ where I got knocked out of top 4 by Underworld Breach, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and the main thing about this deck list is that it's UV Frog with the One Ring
instead of Oculus.
It's got 4 copies of the One Ring instead of Oculus. It doesn't have, it's got Frog, Murktide, all the kind of normal stuff. It's just got the One Ring instead of. I'm trying to remember what maybe it would have instead, but
so like it's not playing Thought Scours.
It wasn't Thought Scours. It also that's what it was. It doesn't have Thoughtseize in the 75, which is pretty much a card that you would normally have in your Frog deck as well. But so it doesn't have Oculus, so it doesn't have extra threats, and it doesn't have Thoughtseize, so it doesn't have Disruption. It just has the One Ring for card advantage. And I liked the list, to be honest. It was really funny. The 2 Dimir Murktide mirrors that I had, both of those players were on Oculus. And one of them was just really unhappy with Oculus and was like, this card sucks and like blah, blah, blah. And then I played the One Ring against them on turn 4, and they were like, now that's what I've been thinking about having in this deck instead. And I was like, it's pretty good. It does kill you because you don't have a lot of ways to gain life in this deck, or any for that matter, really. But it was good. I thought it was fun. So I had a nice experience.
That's important. Magic is about the gathering, after all.
It really is.
I've heard this.
So there you go. Thank you, Richie, for lending David a deck list. Thank you, Martin, for lending me the One Ring. And thank you, Grandmaster Games Oak Park, for running a really great RCQ.
Yeah.
The most important Magic tournament in the world this past weekend. And on that note, let's wrap up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review the show as well. If you'd like to submit a question to us, you can reach us by email, thedivedown@gmail.com. You can tweet us at thedivedown, all one word. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown, or check out our swag at thedivedown.com/store. Save some money on Heavy Play using our promo code, thedivedown2024, for 10% off your first order of deck and dice boxes and play mats and sleeves and paper documents to keep track of your sideboard guides and life totals. Shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring the Dive Down. Sign up for Mana Traders using promo code TheDiveDown10, all one word, all letters, to get 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. Subscribe to Devin's Twitch, twitch.tv/Doomwake. The O's are zeros, people.
They are. Can confirm.
And save some money on paper cards over at Nerd Rage Gaming with promo code DIVE8 for 8% off your order at NRG. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Space Blood for letting us use their music. And until next time, book your tickets to Portland, baby, because the Dive Down is gonna be there, and we're all gonna share a king-size bed, and Stanislav is sleeping in the middle.
That is what you asked for as your RCQ prize, and I guess we can no longer
It
deny
was a
it.
pull-out couch and no one's in it.
Hello. Sorry.
Hello.